Yo, what's up guys, it's Zhao, and today we're going to be going over 6.1b for the Wild Rift patches. Just going over the champion basically changes and talking mostly about that, since that's usually what we care about. So Garen's getting a little bit of a mini rework. His second ability no longer gives damage reduction, and now instead the passive gives 10% bonus armor and magic resist, and then the active ability now just gives a shield that decays over 2.5 seconds, obviously getting more shielding the higher you level it up. And then his third ability no longer does crit on the outside or on the edge of the spin, and now the number of spins goes up with your champion level up to 11 total. If you end the ability early, you now get a cooldown reduction. It reduces the cooldown. If you hit someone 6 times with it, you now apply 25% armor shred, and you deal 20% damage, increased damage to the nearest enemy. So overall, this rework, I like that the damage reduction is gone, because that second ability damage reduction was pretty broken. I still think it's going to be really strong. I mean, it's still going to be, an ability that makes him very tanky. It's still going to be strong. Removing the crit, also, I don't really mind that. I don't really mind it either way, honestly. This armor shred is going to be kind of interesting too. I mean, it's going to definitely be pretty nuts, like in terms of all-inning people getting that armor shred and then using your ultimate on them or something like that, or your other abilities on them rather. Could be interesting to see. Not too sure whether this makes him stronger or weaker, honestly, because the removal of this damage reduction is kind of a big deal. I don't really think Garen will change that much in terms of where he is in the meta, but it's also something we'll kind of have to see as we just go. And this rework does not come out until May 29th, so in 8 days. 7 days by the time you're watching this video. But yeah, I mean, overall, that's the Garen rework. Let's go on to the next champion now. Okay, next up we have Jax. So now Jax can leap to wards with his first ability, which is kind of interesting. The speed is also increased of his leap, and his third ability now dodges abilities with on-hit effects, which is kind of interesting as well. So he's gonna definitely become stronger on this. I mean, not being able to land any on-hit abilities. So I'm thinking that Warwick first ability might get blocked by this now, and other just on-hit abilities like that. In general. So I mean, this is a pretty big buff to Jax, honestly. I mean, the ward thing too makes it a lot easier to get out. If you just ward behind yourself when someone's chasing you, you don't need a teammate anymore to jump to. So yeah, I definitely think Jax is going to be stronger with this. He's already a decent champion, so definitely a really solid champion right now in the meta. Okay, then we have Sona. Her passive, it now is only getting the stacks are only getting consumed when you're attacking a champ or an epic monster. And it also now grants full stacks of passives when you respawn. And then they're nerfing her first ability damage by 10 base at every level. Honestly, I think none of these changes actually really do anything for her. I'm not a big Sona player, but honestly, I really don't think this changes anything. I still think she's a pretty solid champion right now with Ionian boots and everything. But yeah, I think she's just a pretty average enchanter. Still worse than the most OP enchanters, but is pretty strong, especially in the later parts of the game. And yeah, this doesn't really change much in my opinion at all. Next up, Poppy's getting a small buff to jungle. Their first ability is going to do a bit more damage to monsters, which will make their clear speed a bit better. This makes sense because Poppy is a really solid top laner and support, but not really good in jungle right now, so they're just buffing the clear speed to make it a bit stronger. So it's going to be a bit more in line with the other tank junglers overall. Not a huge change though. Then we have Sett. Sett's getting an increase to his base health regeneration, his health per level regeneration. His passive right punch is getting more damage, and his first ability is getting additional movement speed when you click it. All of these things do make him quite a bit better. He's already a decent champion in the meta. His lane phase is going to be much improved, and his overall sustain in the game. So yeah, I definitely think this is a pretty significant buff. I think he's going to be one of the better top laners in the game right now. So if you're looking for any type of bruiser to play who's good into tanks and still works well in most comps, Sett's definitely going to be really solid right now. And then Shen's getting a pretty simple buff, which is his first ability is getting a 50% damage increase to minions, making his wave clear a lot better. This is important for Shen because before clicking your ult and rotating to a teammate, you need to make sure you push your wave out, or else the enemy top laner is going to get way too much free gold. And I see a lot of Shens make this mistake, so this buff makes it a bit easier to do so. Hopefully Shens actually use it for the wave clear before rotating to their team now. But yeah, it's a pretty solid buff. I still think Shen is just a pretty average champion overall though. Then we have Zhao getting a buff. His third ability is getting more base damage and more attack speed increase on each level. I think this is quite nice for Zhao because he is a champion who struggles a lot more than a lot of the other bruisers right now in the meta. They're just a bit better than him. He doesn't really feel like he has a great place in the meta. So I think this makes him a decent bit better. His clear speed will be stronger and he'll get a bit more damage. I don't think it like drastically changes his place in the meta, but he does work well enough in most scenarios, especially when the enemy pick a lot of ranged champions right now. So this buff is nice, but it's nothing special, I would say. And then we have Evelyn getting buffed, who is probably one of the weakest junglers in the game right now. The AP ratio on the first ability is getting increased from 40 to 50%, and the ultimate cooldown is going down by 5 seconds per level. Again, Evelyn's always a champion who's a lot better in solo queue and in low ranks than she is in higher ranks or in, 5-man play, because her invisibility is something that abuses really bad players, and is also just generally good when there's less coordination in the game. So as a champion, she's still going to be pretty weak after this, but as a solo queue champion, she's probably going to be mid-tier at this point, especially when the enemy picks squishy champions or you need an AP jungler right now. Next up, we have Vex, whose passive is getting more damage and first ability is getting a lower cooldown by a second at each level. Vex is generally just a good counter pick into dashing and assassin champions like Aurelia, even champions like Zed, Yasuo, Yone, and so this is going to make Vex a lot better into those champs, because right now, even when the enemy lock in something like Yasuo, Vex still doesn't do that well. They do decent, but not that well. And so now Vex is going to be a lot better into those types of champs. Still probably very weak overall, but now a really good counter pick into those champs thanks to these buffs. So if you're looking for a counter pick into assassins and aggressive champions, Vex is pretty good. Then we have Alistar getting a base health buff and a lower cooldown on his first ability. So overall, he just is not very good in the meta right now because he doesn't work with a lot of the best ADCs too well, and he's just nowhere near as OP as enchanters. I think that these changes do nothing to change his place in the meta. The only reason you would ever really pick Alistar is if he was the only tank you knew how to play and you needed a frontline. But yeah, he's still not a good support. He's fine, like you can play him. It's not the worst champion ever, but enchanters are just so much stronger right now that he's still pretty weak. Okay, next up we have Yone, and so they removed the part of his passive that's reducing crit damage by 10%, and they buffed the thing where every 1% of excessive crit is converted to bonus AD of 0.4. Now it's 0.6 attack damage, so basically excessive crit means going over 100% crit, because obviously he gets 50% crit per crit item, so after 2 crit items you just have excessive crit now, so his excessive crit is getting more damage. Then his first ability crit is getting more AD scaling, and same with Infinity Edge, and then his second ability is getting nerfed by 1% of the target's max health per level. Overall, this makes him a lot more strong as a crit champion, and it's kind of making like the tank build a little worse, since his damage is more now, even more focused on kind of AD and on crit. So I do think that this does make the crit builds a bit better and the tank build a bit worse maybe. We'll see if that's enough to make people actually just always build crit, because that build is still kind of OP. But I kind of like this change because it was really annoying playing against tank Yones and all that stuff all the time. So I definitely don't mind this change at all, and I do think that crit Yone will be a lot stronger. And then they basically did the same thing with Yasuo. So again, it's focused on nerfing tank Yasuo and buffing crit Yasuo. So they made his base AD lower because the tank build relies on having good base AD. So now he has worse base AD, makes the tank build worse, but he's getting more health and health per level to make it so that you're still tanky enough when you're building crit. They did the same thing with the crit passive, so now the damage reduced of his crits are no longer a thing. And then again, the 1% crit, excessive crit, same buff as Yone. Shield duration getting nerfed a bit on his passive, and then his first ability getting less base damage, but more AD scaling. And so yeah, again, same thing, right? Pretty much same thoughts as Yone. I like the change because crit Yasuo, I think is cooler than tank Yasuo, where he can just do a million damage to you and also never die. At least now he's a little squishier and has some type of risk when he's building the crit build. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool overall. Okay, next up they're nerfing Gnar, who is one of the best top laners in the game right now, so I think it makes sense to nerf him. They're nerfing the passive bonus attack speed from 0 to 110% to 0 to 90%, and then they're nerfing the first ability, or second ability rather, passive bonus damage of the third attack, just by some amount each level, 0.5% early on, and then just a little more later on into the game. So that's definitely going to make Gnar a bit weaker. I still think he's a really solid champion. I mean, what makes Gnar so OP especially is his insane CC. Like, he can stun you for like 48 seconds. Yes, that's not an exact, it's 48 seconds. That's how long it is. Definitely. That's how it feels, at least. But yeah, he's definitely still really strong. He's still a good laner. He's pretty consistent throughout the game. So he's still going to be strong, but these nerfs definitely do make him a bit worse, which is good. Okay, and then the most OP champion in the game, in my opinion, right now is Nasus, and he is getting nerfed, which makes me very, very happy because I've been permanently banning him. So his base AD is getting nerfed by 4, but he's getting a bit more base AD per level, basically making him weaker in the early game, but still similar late game. And his magic resist is also getting nerfed, which is nice because you could have some more AP champions doing a lot more damage to him. His passive physical vamp is getting nerfed by 4% level 1, 2% level 2, and then staying the same at 3, or not 3, but you know, level 1, 5, and 9, you know what I mean. And then his first ability cooldown is getting nerfed a bit as well, and his base damage is also getting lowered a bit. So yeah, overall I think this is great. Nasus is like insanely OP, and this makes him a bit more playable, or like have a bit more ability to play against him, because right now it's pretty much you ban him or he runs the entire lobby, because his early game is just not weak enough for his late game being as OP as it is. So I think these nerfs perfectly adjust kind of for that. And yeah, I still think he's going to be really, really solid, but probably no longer the best champion in the game, which I think is good. And for those who disagree with me that Nasus is the most OP champion in the game, they would probably tell you that it's Amumu. So they're nerfing a lot of really OP champions. So shout out to Riot Games for that. First ability cooldown getting higher on each level and getting lower damage on each level. And then the ultimate going up by 10 seconds per level as well. These changes to me aren't as big of nerfs as the Nasus nerfs. I still think Nasus and Amumu are going to be really strong. I think that obviously, you know, these cooldown reductions are, these cooldown becoming larger rather, they help, but I don't think they like especially make him that much weaker. I still think he has pretty much all of the OP things he does. He's extremely easy to play. He has really good CC. His damage is still really high. He has versatility in builds, and his clear speed is insanely broken. So I think all those things are still true. It's just the cooldown's a little higher, so like really doesn't change much to me. I like that they're nerfing him, and I also like that they're not trying to like nerf him into the ground just because he's strong. But yeah, I still think Amumu is going to be the best, or at least one of the best junglers in the game after these nerfs. Okay, and then if people didn't think Amumu and they didn't think Nasus was the most OP in the our champion in the game, they'd probably tell you that they thought it was Ryze. In my opinion, Ryze is probably one of, if not the most overrated champions in the game. I think he's probably like the 4th or 5th best mid laner in the game right now before these nerfs, but I still think he's super overrated because to me, everyone tells me he's the best champion in the game. He's super OP. In my opinion, he's really strong, but he gets countered by a lot of ranged champions, a lot of poke champs, and he's not nearly as strong as people talked about, but I do think he's still really, really good, and I think these nerfs make sense. They're nerfing his base health, which is really important for a champion like Ryze because he has to get a bit closer. He's a shorter range burst kind of mage. They're nerfing his damage on his first ability, which I think makes sense. And then I'm pretty sure they're nerfing their damage on their third ability. It says cooldown here, but then it gives damage numbers, and that's the damage. So I'm pretty sure they're nerfing his damage. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't understand this, but yeah, pretty sure they're also just nerfing third ability damage. So overall, just a big damage nerf to a champion who's mostly focused on dealing damage. I think this makes Ryze become a pretty middle of the pack champion. I don't think he's going to be nearly as strong anymore. I think people who don't understand how he works and don't understand that even though he's a mage, he has really good consistent DPS because of the way his spells work. Yeah, I mean, I think those players might still think he's OP, but I think overall, range champions, poke champions, he's really not that great into, but he's really good into tankier champs or champs that get up close and personal because he just does really well into that type of thing. But yeah, I think this nerf is nice. I think it brings him pretty in line with the other kind of burst mages as well. Then we have Jarvan, and his third ability is getting a buff in terms of the attack speed that it gives, and it's also getting a base damage buff, and then his ultimate cooldown is getting nerfed slightly. For me, Jarvan is really just a counterpick champion when the enemy have no dashes, or like a limited amount of dashes. So if they pick Jinx or Sivir and Lulu, you know, or Amelia or that type of thing, champions that you can really lock down and kind of shut down, that's really what he's good at. And I don't think this changes much of that. He's going to be a bit better at doing that. He's still not going to be a champion you pick if the enemy have a bunch of dashes, because you would just pick something like Vi instead, or Wukong or whoever. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all. Still good in the same scenarios, just a bit better now. All right, then Olaf is getting a buff, so his first ability damage is getting a higher, you know, base damage at every level apart from level 1, and his third ability is getting more damage to monsters. So it basically makes his clear speed a bit better and his damage slightly better overall. I already thought Olaf was a really, really good champion, pretty underrated, honestly. He's really good anytime the enemy lock in a lot of melee champs or a lot of CC champs. And honestly, yeah, I've seen some players dominate with him in my games. So yeah, I think he's really good already. I think this buff doesn't do a whole lot, but it makes his clear speed a bit better, which is nice. And yeah, he's still a really good counter pick into those same champs he's always been good into. And then for Vi, they're just buffing her damage, so her passive damage is more, and her first ability's damage is more. Honestly, I already thought that Vi was a pretty solid champion right now in the meta. I didn't think she was bad at all. Her clear speed's really solid, which always helps keeping up with junglers. Very good on level 5 to get some easy ganks before the first dragon or herald. And then she still scales decently well, can build a lot of different ways, pretty good bruiser champion. So I was kind of surprised to see her getting a buff. The only struggle that she has is in the champions, you know, like ADCs with spell shields or veils from enchanters, but she can just target the enchanter in that case. So yeah, I really don't know why she got buffed, but she did, and I think she's going to be really strong for sure. Okay, and now we have a bunch of item changes, and again, these are really good. Just like honestly, a lot of these like buffs and nerfs have been really good, and I think for the last like however many patch notes videos you guys have heard me saying like that most of the time these are actually really good changes. So as much as people complain about a lot of things, you know, in Riot Games, in terms of like their, you know, matchmaking or like that type of thing, which is fair to complain about these things, I think we have to give credit when they're making really good balance changes as well, which we've seen pretty consistently over the last couple patches. So getting into it, Vandal Fantasy, which is pretty much an item that was just a bad version of Ludens, is getting brought in line with Ludens. So now it has the same amount of AP that Ludens gives, and the Flame Blossom passive is getting a bit more base damage. So now this is actually going to be an item that probably does slightly more damage, I believe now, than Ludens, but it still does not apply to wave clear. Because it has, so the base damage of Ludens for its passive is 110, the base damage of this is 105, but Vandal Fantasy has 15% AP scaling, Ludens only has 10%, so now Vandal Fantasy actually does more damage, but it doesn't help with wave clear. So there's actually a reason to go Vandal Fantasy now. It's basically, do you want the extra wave clear, or do you want a little bit more damage on the passive? Because the rest of the stats are basically the same now, so kind of an interesting thing to look into. Then we have Malignance, getting a bit less, you know, cost and a bit more AP. Not many champions use this item, but the champions that do use it really well, like Ahri, Annie. Those champions do utilize Malignance really well, but almost no other champions do, so they're kind of, you know, buffing it a bit. So it's strong on those types of champions and maybe used by a couple more champs. I think it's fine. I don't think this changes a whole lot in terms of who uses it or anything like that. Then Redemption. So basically, they say they've adjusted the build path to support tanky enchanters with sustainability for themselves and the team, while reducing the healing and shielding, scaling it grants to supports. So I think this is fine. They changed the build path. I don't actually know what the build path was originally, but this is what it is now. The max health it gives is more, and now they're removing the healing and shield ratio, so you don't get any bonus healing or shielding from that. And then Redemption healing value is getting buffed a bit, down by 10 base, but up 1% bonus health. I believe this would be more overall. I haven't done the math on it, but I'm pretty sure it would be. And then, yeah, for Redemption, I still think it's a shit item. I think it's always been a shit item. I don't know why people build it. I think it sucks. But yeah, that's my opinion on it, honestly. Harmonic Echo, they're nerfing the healing and shielding ratio by 2%. And then they're also changing the passive now. Instead of giving the empowered healing effect to people lower than 40%, it now is only for people lower than 30%, where it would increase the healing potency by 150%. So I think that's good as well. Harmonic Echo, pretty OP item, and you can see they're nerfing enchanters really hard, which is why I was mentioning that this is a really good patch, because honestly enchanters are super broken, and they're broken because of their items. They're not really broken because of their spells for the most part. And or at least, you know, for the most part, there's some like Lulu and Melia are broken because of their spells, but most of the other ones are just broken because of these items. And so nerfing that is definitely really good. Staff of Flowing Waters is also getting a nerf. It's costing 100 more. The ability haste is getting lowered to 10 from 20, and the healing and shielding ratio also going to 8% from 10. And then for the passive now, instead of providing after you heal or shield an ally, you give them 15 ability haste. You now give them 10. And then Ardent Sensor also getting healing and shielding ratio nerfed from 10 to 8%. So overall, all of the most OP items that people build on enchanters are getting nerfed, which I love so much. I think this is really good for the game, because enchanters to me should never really be better than tanks. I think they should be an option compared to tanks, but I don't think they should ever actually be better than tanks, because they're super low skilled. They're pretty much reliant on duo, and they're just unfun to play against. I think the only thing that they need to do is remove Veil from the game as well, but I don't think they're going to do that. But yeah, I'm really happy with these changes. Overall, I would rate this patch as like honestly an S tier patch. I think the balance changes are amazing. They nerfed pretty much all the most strong champions. For the most part, they nerfed a lot of OP items. They buffed champs that make sense for the most part. So let me know your thoughts on this patch. I thought it was really good. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later.